For generations, First Nations and other Indigenous peoples have struggled to find the same prosperity and opportunities that are available to Canadians as a whole. Everyone knows that more than 150 years of federal government intervention in Indigenous lives has brought much more heartache and poverty than empowerment and advancement. However, according to Stephen Buffalo, the President and CEO of the Indian Resource Council, this trend is finally changing. He joined us at MLI for a panel event recently, and he had this to say. Take a look.
Indigenous people are sick and tired of being seen as a problem for Canada. We understand that Canada's prosperity can and should be good for Indigenous people. However, the Canadians need to appreciate that our prosperity is good for Canada too. We've already seen many success stories in the resource sector and in many other areas in the Canadian economy. You know, we've waited for generations for a chance to be treated as full economic partners. Now we have the political and legal authority to ensure our intentions and interests are met. Resource development is the new fur trade. We can rebuild partnerships and cooperations that provide an economic foundation for Canada. The Trans Mountain and other pipeline controversies show how important that Indigenous people, the Government of Canada, and all Canadians get this right to move forward. The organization I represent will continue to speak out in support of the oil and gas industry, pipelines, and alternative energy and other infrastructure that are a benefit to our Indigenous people. It is for that reason that we want Trans Mountain to be built as soon as possible and the federal government to stop adding barriers, such as the Bill C-69, to help build this country together. Hi, and Naskaman, thank you very much.
According to Buffalo, there is an increasing appetite in favor of resource development among Indigenous communities. First Nations have fought for and won recognition of their Aboriginal and treaty rights. Many communities have converted these rights into opportunity and secured modern treaties or settlements of special claims. Hundreds signed impact and benefit agreements with resource companies. They are now producing energy resources on their reserve lands, purchasing oil and gas leases, establishing service and supply businesses, and finding employment. We are seeing the first substantial signs in generations that the Canadian economy can work for Indigenous peoples. Moreover, the revenues that are being generated by these activities are flowing to Indigenous communities, giving them the means to pursue their own social, cultural, and economic objectives without interference by Ottawa bureaucrats. As Buffalo says, no community has ever escaped poverty in the long term without paying its own way in the world, and natural resources are offering many Indigenous communities just that opportunity. Buffalo worries, however, that some of this progress may be endangered due to Bill C-69, the federal government's sweeping new environmental legislation. If passed in its current form, C-69 has the potential to undermine the hard-won gains of Indigenous peoples in the natural resource economy. From Buffalo's point of view, the bill is being rushed through without the government honoring its legal and constitutional obligations to consult comprehensively with Indigenous peoples. Since his government was elected in 2015, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has repeatedly spoken about his personal commitment to a new relationship with Indigenous peoples in Canada. This commitment is impressive and welcome, and no doubt sincere, but a vital issue is being largely overlooked. Buffalo finds it hard to square the government's stated commitment with many of its subsequent actions. As we've seen repeatedly in recent years, the Government of Canada appears to have a tendency to consult primarily with people and organizations that share its views on environmental issues. It pays rather less attention to other Indigenous groups, for example, equally concerned about environmental sustainability, but who seek a more balanced approach to resource development. To take a few examples, the government cancelled the Northern Gateway pipeline without consulting properly with Indigenous peoples in the region. It unilaterally imposed a ban on tankers along the west coast, again without discussing the economy-destroying impact of this decision on Indigenous peoples. The same is true of the moratorium on oil and gas exploration in Arctic waters. And Ottawa's management of the Trans Mountain Pipeline, again, has privileged the views of environmental groups much more than oil and gas producing First Nations, for example, putting at risk a project that has the potential to bring great benefits to otherwise struggling communities. Far from being uniformly opposed to resource development, many Indigenous nations understand that careful engagement and effective partnerships will provide a once-in-a-century opportunity to share in Canada's prosperity. And they are concerned that in its current form, Bill C-69 would create a slower and more burdensome assessment and evaluation process, adding complicated impact assessment requirements that would significantly broaden the scope and reach of the required evaluations. This would serve as a major disincentive to investment and harm many ambitious Indigenous economic plans. The First Nations who share the concerns highlighted by Stephen Buffalo care deeply about the environment. They work more closely than ever with resource companies and are negotiating fair and balanced development plans and environmental protections, all without government interference. Many Indigenous communities are not asking for more from the government. They are instead asking for less government intervention. Bill C-69, in its present form, could undercut Indigenous autonomy and would shift more authority to environmental interveners who in large part do not have a direct stake in the affected communities. That's why the Indian Resource Council and other organizations have called on the government to pull Bill C-69 and to revisit its consultations with Indigenous peoples and organizations. What's at stake is no less than the future prosperity of hundreds of Indigenous communities who wish to see these projects succeed. This is not to say that there is consensus on Bill C-69. Many, including leaders in the mining industry, have rightfully pointed out that C-69 corrects some particularly egregious issues for that sector, including by providing tighter timelines and clearer expectations in some cases. But what Stephen Buffalo and others are suggesting is not a complete return to the drawing board on C-69. Instead, the legislation should be corrected so as to still provide necessary relief for industries like the mining sector, while at the same time allowing Indigenous communities to still pursue resource development opportunities on their own terms. We do not have to compromise one industry or stakeholder for the sake of another. Pipeline delays and cancellations, open-ended and expensive consultation processes, and general project uncertainty have already scared off a great deal of investment capital and have put many projects at risk. In parts of the West, including a substantial number of Indigenous communities, economic prosperity is threatened. A government that purports to care profoundly about the needs and interests of Indigenous communities must pay greater attention to the economic opportunities that are being lost for many of these peoples. Rushing forward at a time when the energy sector is being battered from all sides would be imprudent, not to mention a violation of Indigenous people's right to be consulted and their interests accommodated. The whole country needs time to make sense of the implications. Greater uncertainty is the last thing Canada or First Nations need. I'm Brian Lee Crowley for the Macdonald-Laurier Institute.